Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We're going to do two brief talks here, and what we're going to do is have Tim lead off, and then I'm going to come back and join you guys and do a brief talk for the second half. So I'm going to just briefly introduce Tim, because I want to get us right to the action. I'm not really sure what I can say about Tim other than he's kind of the alpha geek's alpha geek. And he's been explaining to us what technology means and what it's going to mean to the rest of us before I even knew that technology was going to mean something to me. So I'm just unbelievably thrilled that he can be here. He's a real thought leader who's been doing a lot of thinking more recently about what technology is going to do to government, how it's going to transform government. So with no further ado, we're going to turn to Google Plus and Google Hangout, and we're going to have Tim share a few words with us. So, oh, there he is. Perfect. Hey, Tim, go for it.
All right, hi, I'm really glad to be here. I believe it's time to reinvent government for the 21st century. And you're all here because I think you're the people who are going to be a big part of doing that. So I'm going to talk about lessons from the technology industry that can be applied to 21st century government. Okay. So I've been working with an organization called Code for America. It's a nonprofit that works with cities to help make government work better for everyone. I want to start the talk with what you might call the paradox of government. It's too big and it costs too much, yet there are problems that the private sector alone can't solve. Jen Paulka, founder and executive director of Code for America, has one simple answer to this paradox. She asks, what if we felt about government the way we feel about our iPhones? I suspect that, like Apple customers, we'd be happy to pay our taxes because we love the product we're getting. Code for America runs a service year program that brings talented web developers and designers to work with cities for a year. Last year, fellow Scott Silverman, who previously worked at Apple, explained why he had applied to the program. He said, I believe that interfaces to government can be simple, beautiful, and easy to use. So that's lesson one, is from Apple by way of Code for America. Get people excited about government. We've got to reinvent the citizen experience, just like Apple reinvented the user experience. What if government set out, like Code for America does, to reinvent that citizen experience, to make interfaces to government be simple, beautiful, and easy to use? What if we made government so wonderful that people were happy to pay their taxes because they felt like they were getting a good deal? Let me show you one of these simple, beautiful, and easy to use projects, a potential replacement for the website of the city of Honolulu. It's a search engine called Honolulu Answers that gives simple, plain language, clear answers to the most common questions asked by citizens in Honolulu. Now, you've all seen a lot of government websites. They're full of press releases, and they're crowded with information that no one needs. The current Honolulu website is no exception. If I had more time, I'd show you that website. What the Code for America team working with the city of Honolulu did seems obvious to those of us in Silicon Valley. They mined the visitor logs of the existing site and the city's call center to find out what people are really looking for instead of what government departments wanted to say about themselves. Oh no.
There we go.
All right. All right, so you guys have missed the slides. I don't know. Shall I kind of go back through them?
We should show them the home.
Yeah, let's. Can we go back there? No, we're there. We go.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. So this is Honolulu Answers, and here we are with the visitor logs. Okay, it's lagging somewhat. Okay. So this is an important lesson from the consumer internet. Use data to make better decisions. Companies like Google crunch enormous amounts of data to figure out what results to show and what advertisements to pair with those results. Their success at helping people get right to the answers they need has changed our world. But under the skin, it's important to realize that Google is also a great model for a 21st century regulatory system. I know that in Washington and around the world, regulation has become kind of a dirty word, and everybody likes to talk about making markets work better without explaining how you actually do that. Well, I'm not going to back down. One of the things that makes market work better is the right kind of regulation. Your car's carburetor or fuel injection system is a regulatory system. The autopilot of an airplane is a regulatory system. And Google's system for surfacing the best content and not showing you spam is a regulatory system, using algorithms, which is another word for rules, and feedback loops to keep on course.
I'm gonna go back down.
There's another thing we're reminded of every time we look at a page of Google search results. Those results are crowdsourced from the work of millions of voices. Google doesn't just take us to one site, one voice. And that's what Code for America took into account when designing Honolulu Answers. Rather than having the city staff or the Code for America fellows write the answers, they convened a gathering of citizens to suggest new questions, write the answers in plain English. And that leads me to lesson 3, create an architecture of participation. What's so wonderful about the web is that, like the market, it doesn't prescribe what people should do. It creates a space in which people can create and participate, add some regulatory mechanisms to keep out bad actors like spammers, and then lets the best stuff float to the top. Jen Paulka said this well in her TED Talk. She said, "We don't want government to work like a Silicon Valley startup. We want it to work like the internet itself. When government works like the internet, it lays down standards and infrastructure that the market can build on to deliver new value for society. Government is not the provider of last resort. It's the framer of rules and the builder of foundations." Another way of saying this is that government is a platform. The internet is a good example of government acting to create something that the private sector can build on, but it's not the only one. Government is in a unique position to do things that are hard and big and that no one else can do, and that then enable the private sector. National highways, space travel, satellites, they're all good examples. GPS, global positioning satellites, are another great example. Huge project with uncertain return, started in 1973, but only showing enormous fruit in the 21st century, with huge value add from the commercial sector. Everything from maps and directions on your phone to future self-driving cars spring from this government platform investment. And more than that, the key policy decision to open the data and make it available for commercial use. We're seeing similar platform policy decisions from the Obama administration for healthcare and financial data today, and that makes me very optimistic. Data is the platform for the 21st century, and government acting as a platform provider means opening up data services that feed third-party applications, just like Apple opened up the iPhone to third parties to create a vibrant new ecosystem. For example, a data standard called Open 311 allows applications to seamlessly interact with 311 systems across the nation. 311, by the way, is the number that you call to report problems like potholes or graffiti. It's just like 911, but for non-emergencies. Having a data standard allows outside organizations like startups like SeeClickFix and organizations like Code for America to build third-party applications that provide new services both to cities and to citizens. Here's a screenshot from Code for America's 311 application, the Daily Brief, the pulse of the city. My notion of government as a platform is rooted in the idea that government is, at bottom, a mechanism for collective action. It's a means of doing things that are best done together. So I was delighted recently to discover that Abraham Lincoln said much the same thing 150 years ago. He said, "The legitimate object of government is to do for the people what needs to be done, but which they cannot by individual effort do at all or do so well for themselves." But this notion also suggests a level of restraint. The best government programs enable the private sector. They don't compete with it. I hope that government follows this lead, that it enables, and to use Cass Sunstein and Richard Thaler's notion, nudges the market in the right direction to produce socially beneficial outcomes, but that it does so with a light hand. As the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said 3,000 years ago, when the best leader leads, the people say, "We did it ourselves." And that's really how we start thinking about the job of reinventing government for the 21st century. The lessons from Silicon Valley are fundamental to the success of the consumer internet. I think they can give a great deal of guidance as well to our work on reinventing government for the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Right on. Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much, Tim, for joining us. That was fantastic. To me, a tough act to follow. Because we're kind of constrained for time, I think we're going to just dive right in to the next talk, which is happily, or maybe unhappily for those in the audience, me. So just a little bit about me. My name's David Eaves. I've been an open government advocate and open data advocate for many, many years now, and I work with several governments and kind of sometimes helpfully working with them and sometimes less helpfully pushing them to think about how they architect themselves and how they work to try to improve the citizen experience and an increasing amount of transparency and hopefully democracy in our societies. And I kind of want to start off by pointing to you to my least favorite website, potentially now in the world, which comes from my hometown in the city of Vancouver. It's not run by the city, but it's run by a regional authority, and it's the restaurant inspection website. So I want you to ignore the fact that the site is not particularly attractive, and then I want you to ignore the fact that it has this kind of disclaimer that says anything you might find out on this website you're probably not educated enough to use or know how to use, so you probably shouldn't pay too much attention to it. And then I want you to ignore the fact that the search is not particularly great, and then when you finally do get to the place that you're looking for, the restaurant you'll find, it has kind of meaningless information that you as a citizen would have a very, very hard time deciphering. I want you to ignore all of that stuff. And I want you to just accept for the depressing next 30 seconds the simple fact that the only time you end up on this website is after you've been food poisoned. This is the only time. If you go here before you're choosing restaurants, you are the most OCD person I know, and you maybe deserve an award, but this is what happens. You get poisoned, then you go and you're like, oh, did the guys get caught before? I want to go find out. And that's the only time. So this, for me, when Tim talks about design, I think there's an aesthetic design, but there's a process design as well, which is that we have all sorts of information that we think is essential for citizens to know, and we make it incredibly difficult for them to find out about it. Because what you really want is you want this information to appear before you choose a restaurant, because we actually have academic literature that tells us that has a big impact on healthcare costs, reduces the number of people going to the emergency room. And so you probably want it looking something like this, integrated with other types of restaurant information like reviews, so that when you pull out your phone and you're saying, where am I going to go eat today, you know beforehand not just how the restaurants have been rated for quality, but also how well they've been rated for the type of quality you're not normally thinking about. And this, for me, is kind of the crux of how we should be thinking about kind of Gov 2.0 and open government, is that it gives us an opportunity to kind of rethink these services in the same way that Google helped us rethink public transit, which does the same thing of what I'm proposing, but in the transit space, which shows you very easily how to get from A to B, because you don't use a transit authority's website, because normally you don't know what bus stop you're going to. You know the address you're trying to go to, or the store you're trying to go to, and that integrates it. So you can say, take me to Sears, and all of a sudden it shows you the fastest route to Sears. And by the way, it does it in English, and then it also does it in Spanish, and it also does it in Chinese. So it's really, really convenient if you don't happen to live in the city where you're looking at this web page. So this type of stuff only happens when we allow for a certain amount of experimentation. And that, for me, is kind of where the open part of open government matters so much. Because when you start doing things like open data, you take government's information, you start putting it online in structured ways so people can start playing with it, that's when the fun can start to happen. So some friends of mine and myself, we kind of got together and we took all Vancouver's garbage zones and garbage information and we mapped it. So you can set up garbage day reminders for yourself so you wouldn't forget to take the garbage out, or actually what you do is you sign your spouse up so that they get the email and they get reminded to take the garbage out, or at least I was on the receiving end of that. So we do that, and then some other interesting things, this was a Code for America project. They mapped all the hydrants in Boston, and then you can adopt a hydrant, and that means in the winter, you're not signing a blood contract, but you're yeah, I'm going to be out shoveling. I will try to shovel the hydrant because the first 2 minutes of a fire are the most dangerous points of that fire, and if the firemen are busy running around trying to find the hydrant and then digging it out, lives might be at risk there. So why don't we encourage citizens to try to help us manage that public asset by using technology? And then there was this guy in Vancouver. He recreated the downtown part of Vancouver in 3D because he wanted to plot a new building to show what it would look like. And he could put you on any street corner, on any balcony, and he would take this to city council. And suddenly you have citizens who in some ways almost have better representations and visualizations of what their city is going to look like than the politicians and the city staff do. And then, let's not forget there's fun. This was a group of students who built a Grand Theft Auto style video game using City of Vancouver data so they could drive around City of Vancouver and pick people up in taxi cars and crash them and things like that. And more seriously, a local think tank grabbed the city's data and then began to plot what rising sea levels will do to the city. Bingtom Architects was a very large and well-known architecture firm. Bingtom's quite famous. I think they have probably done between $150,000 and $300,000 in free consulting services for the city, just in the incredible reports that they've managed to write. And then the unknowns, like this is a little tool you plug in any address in any city that has Google Transit data. It immediately begins to plot how long it will take for you to get anywhere, and where it's white, you're just never getting there on public transit. It's the depressing part. But this kind of tool, like 10 years, 15 years ago, this was like a $50,000 tool to create. And now it's like a weekend project. I think this guy did it in 4 hours. So it's totally changing the types of tools that we have at our disposal. And even just like beautiful things like this from a democratic perspective, so important, visualizing budgets so that people can understand it, because nobody understands your spreadsheets. They don't care. So what we've got to be doing is thinking differently about how we visualize that type of information. This is the opportunity that I think we have in front of us. I really want people here to kind of, when you go back home, you start talking about your debates, push people to think differently about not just how they aesthetically design things, but they put citizens at the center and really think how we can rethink the way government works. Thank you so much.